If you like what you hear on this podcast, please help us grow. A 5-star review on Apple Podcast is the gold standard, and I'd appreciate it very much. Thanks in advance. Welcome in to the Tuesday, June 25th Fun Astrology Podcast. Thomas Miller, glad you're here. We don't have a whole lot of action in the sky, but we got a great listener question that I think you're going to like because I've had 2 questions about the oracle planet. So we're going to get to that in just a quick second. Let's talk about the moon before we do. The moon is still in Aquarius. Don't tell me what to do. But it will go void of course tonight, 6:30 Eastern, for 7.5 hours. Tomorrow morning at just after 2 a.m., it moves into Pisces. People say, what time zone? Well, I try to say it about 5 or 6 or 14 times during an episode. Always Eastern here. We just keep the clock on Eastern time, and then we can move it around from there. But I get it. I feel like I'm in the caboose time zone out here on the West Coast, and I miss that Eastern coast. My whole life is Eastern time zone, and so is the chart on this show. Now, let's take a question here real quick.
I had a question about the oracle planet. I was born July 4th, 1983 at 12:52 a.m. So I was born before sunrise that day. So is my oracle planet the planet that rose July 3rd, or is it still on the day that I was born? Thanks for your help.
Another listener sent a question about her chart and showed the structure of the sunrise at that point, but was looking below the horizon, not above the horizon. But let me contextualize this just a bit before we answer the question, because these are some of these little minor things that are embellishments to the chart. They are not the main focus. So don't get overly fixated, especially on a day-by-day basis with the oracle planet. It's a neat little thing to observe. We're also observing the moon wobble right now, another one of these little things that may or may not have much of an impact. It really blows your mind when you understand how much is packed into that little wheel. There are so many ways to look at it, and yet, especially if you're just getting started with this, you need to stick with the basics. But I do think that there is a thematic correlation to the planet that came up in the horizon right before we were born, and some characteristics that unfold in our life. I definitely do. So it's worth noting. So the way that you determine it for your natal birth chart is you take whatever day, calendar day that you were born. So our listener, happy birthday coming up, was born July 4th, born in the wee hours of the morning. Well, it is the date, July 4th. So you take your software, whether you're using SolarFire or AstroGold or Kepler or Astro.com or astro-seek.com, they're all great. You don't worry about your birth time. Just take the day, that day, July 4th, 1983, and you might set it for whatever the likely sunrise time was that morning. Let's just say for round numbers, 6 a.m. Then all of these software programs have a way to advance the time by clicking on like minutes or hours. Now, this is where the house system that you're using comes into play, but you have to find on the house system that you're in where the ascendant point is. That will either be typically the cusp of the first house, or if it's in whole sign, for example, the ascendant is a point in the chart. Using that little clicker, move the sun to that point. And I mean, it is the exact point where that takes place, because sometimes it can be that you'll have a planet right there, right conjunct your sun, and it is either up or above it or below it. And by that I'm talking about, so visualize in your mind, this action is all happening on the astrology wheel at about the 9 o'clock position. The planets on that chart move in clockwise position, clockwise fashion. So they are moving from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock. They are moving from the left side of the chart, that 9 o'clock horizon, up to the top toward noon, okay? Be really clear on that. They're moving up in clockwise fashion. The planet that is right above the sun, as the sun is on that ascendant point, that's your oracle planet. It might be really, really close, or like the chart that I'm looking at for today, Jupiter is about 27 degrees above the sun. I mean, that's the width of almost a whole sign. Now, if you look at today's chart, for example, you'll see that there's a spread between Jupiter and the sun, and then you'll see that Venus and Mercury are in the sign of Cancer, higher in degree than the sun. Venus is at 10 degrees. Mercury is at 16, but because of that structure, think about it, in the sign of Cancer, they are actually below the horizon. So what you can do to verify that is simply click the chart a couple of minutes beyond the ascendant, and you'll see the sun is north of it, above it, moving toward noon. The other planets are not quite there yet. You click a couple of more times, and all three are now up. Well, still Jupiter, the one that came up before, is the oracle planet. Babies born today, that will be Jupiter, so they will experience Jupiterian characteristics. Maybe they should answer those phone calls when it's an unidentifiable number. Go ahead and take the call. It might be something you'd like to hear. But back to our listener's question, it really has nothing to do with another day other than your birth date. And I'm glad that we could clear that up. Hopefully that helps. All right, you guys have a great day. We have, speaking of aspects and the ones that we just mentioned, Venus and Mercury are in tomorrow's news, and we'll talk about that in tomorrow morning's podcast. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Bye-bye.